Sterilizing, buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they war. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die. Cause God forgive. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See your shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Okay, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.TV, and I just love saying this. The best little network on the whole darn internet. Nice day today. It's nice and sunny. It's finally warm. I looked around a little bit, and I guess yesterday Brzezinski died, and I was kind of hopeful this morning when I got up that maybe Kissinger had died, but not yet. But the upside is his time is running short. So we're watching some of these masterminds they're starting to drop like flies, which is okay with me. But they did spend their lives building up a spider's web for us to tear apart. And we're going to have to do it. The beauty of these people is they write everything down. So I want to put out a special thank you wherever you are, Mr. Brzezinski. I want to put out a special thank you for you dying because I really never read any of your stuff before. Now I'm encouraged to read it, and so again, thanks for dying, because if you hadn't, I probably wouldn't have read your stuff. I got too much stuff on the plate already. So thank you again for dying. Appreciate it. Now, I read a little bit of this stuff last night, and I'm just going to go and start at the beginning of his book, Out of Control. Global Turmoil on the Eve of the 21st Century. It was written in 93. And the book's got a lot to say. I don't have it all. I'm just reading it on Google Books, which for some oddball reason, deletes certain pages. But this particular book, Ha Ha, is dedicated to Jimmy Carter, whose message of human rights continues to resonate. Well, Carter's always been a player. Carter was a peanut farmer. Carter was somebody they picked up that they could use. Simple as that. And Carter is not going to be around much longer either. I think he's at 90 or something now, 90, 91, somewhere in there. Prince Philip's 91 or 2 or something in there. The Queen ain't young. So these people are going to start dropping like flies pretty quick. And we really need to be in a position to change things around the way they should be as these people kick off. We can't just let it go. I mean, they've spent their entire lives locking us down, and we got to kick it loose somehow. So he's dedicated this book to Jimmy Carter, who's a UN flake, right? Mr. Habitat. And see us helping the people? Well, if you didn't hold the people in poverty, then you wouldn't have to help them, now would you? It's like it's just not good. Anyways, the introduction of this book, which I didn't get to last night, is pretty interesting, actually. So we'll do a little bit of that. And the earth is shaking off the ticks, is in the chat, which is exactly right. It's time to shake the evil off the planet. 99.99999% of all the people on the planet are basically good people. And we've allowed ourselves to be controlled and shackled by such a minute, it's about the size of a tick, really, sucking the life out of us, sucking the life out of this planet. And we're going to do some ass kicking, and it's going to be good. And then we're going to get things back. And some of the stuff that's said in this book is extremely pertinent for today, because they always tell you what they're doing. They always tell you what they're up to, and it's my fault for failing to read this particular gentleman. All I knew about him was, actually, his father, like a lot of these people, his father was actually, what was his father? His father had something to do with, where is that? His, it was all international studies. 1938, his father was posted to Montreal as a consul general. Okay, so it runs in the family. And Brzezinski went to basically Loyola High School in Montreal, and then McGill University. So chances are the Jesuits got a hold of him, and away goes his career. A lot of evil come out of McGill University. A lot of nasty experiments went on at McGill University. And it looks like Brzezinski enjoyed it. It's the same as, people talk about Orwell, right? Well, I think it was his father or somebody in the family was high up in the bureaucracy there. Orwell didn't write a fictional story. He wrote what the plan was. That's what he did. He just laid it down for you. And Brzezinski here does a pretty good job of laying some of this stuff down. This book is not a prediction, but an urgent warning. It is about the state of global politics today, about what may happen by the onset of the 21st century. And also about what must not be allowed to happen. My concern that global change is out of control involves a necessarily subjective interpretation of the political meaning and message of our times. It is hence partially diagnosis, partially prognosis, and partially advocacy. This personal statement occasionally even trespasses on the philosophical. But it is not possible to deal with modern global politics in the age of massive political awakening without taking into account the consequences not only of enhanced human capabilities, but also of changes in the dominant content of the human spirit. Recognition of the notable acceleration in the velocity of our history and the uncertainty of its trajectory is the necessary point of departure for my argument. History has not ended, but has become compressed, whereas in the past, historical epochs stood out in relatively sharp relief, and one could thus have a defined sense of historical progression. History today entails sharp discontinuities that collide with each other, condense our sense of perspective, and confuse our historical perceptions as planned. In other words, we live in a world that is already in fact very different from the one which we have begun to comprehend, and by the time our comprehension is caught up with the new reality, the world is likely to be even more drastically different in ways that today may seem unthinkable. Discontinuity is the central reality of our contemporary history, and that demands an intensified debate regarding the meaning of our era. Moreover, our ability to understand the wider ramifications of the present, not to speak of the future, is impeded by the massive collapse, especially in the advanced parts of the world, that would be us, of almost all established values. Totalitarian doctrines have been discredited, and that is to be applauded, but the role of religion in defining moral standards has also declined, while an ethos of consumerism masquerades as a substitute for ethical standards. Humanity's capacity to control itself and its environment has been expanding exponentially, and our material expectations even more so. At the same time, our societal criteria of moral discernment and of self-control have become increasingly vague. Ethical perplexity does not enhance historical comprehension. This book is based on a central premise that ultimately it is the ideas that mobilize political action and thus shape the world. Such ideas may be simple or complex, good or bad, well understood or just intrinsically felt. At times, they may be articulated by charismatic personalities. At other times, they may be just pervasively present. Ours is the age of global political awakening, and hence political ideas are likely to be increasingly central, either as a source of intellectual cohesion or of confusion, as well as of political consequences or conflict. I focus more specifically on three broad questions. Number one, what is the historical significance of the grand failure during the 20th century of totalitarianism in general and of communism in particular as an ideological force in world affairs? Number two, what is a likely doctrinal and geopolitical shape of the world as it enters the 21st century? And three, what are the implications of the foregoing for America's role in the world and also for America society itself? These are large questions. They're also complex, timely, and important. I try to address them not in an extended, heavily documented, and rather academic volume, but through a direct personal statement. I want to leave the reader with a clear grasp of my arguments so that he or she can then decide whether my case is compelling or dubious. I should make it clear, however, that this is not a policy book with a list of instant solutions or complex problems. The issues that I discuss are intractable, deeply rooted in long-term historical tides, and their correction requires first a profound reassessment of basic political and social values. Now, the reason he's saying all of this stuff, is that he's part of the Trilateral Commission, which these guys set up, in particular Rockefeller, and they never give you solutions. They create problems, and they figure out the solutions that they want, but what they do is they basically deal in scenarios. So, is it good or is it bad? Is it this? Is it that? Would this be the answer? Maybe that's the answer, right? And we'll just throw this out there and see what happens. But they don't just throw it out there and see what happens. They control it as it goes along because they're coming to the same solution. It doesn't matter how you get to the end. You're going to end up with one of their scenarios. And if you look at UN documents, they're all written the same damn way. Okay? They're not telling you this is what you're going to do. They're giving you scenarios. This may or that may, or this may be good or may be bad, whatever. But it always gets them where they want you to be. And so we'll just go through a little bit more of this stuff. The case is derived in part from some of my previous books. In Between Two Ages, 1970, I argued that America was plunging into a new era ahead of most of the world. And this explained both America's troubles and its promise, while the Soviet Union was likely to remain mired in the early stages of its industrial development. I returned to some of these themes in this book. In Game Plan, 1986, I made the case that the United States could prevail peacefully in the Cold War, especially given the internal weakness of the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet Union had to come down because Paul Warburg at the 1950 Senate hearing stated specifically, how are we going to have a world government? Because that was the statement. We will have a world government by consent or by conquest. But how are we going to have a world government? We have two opposing international powers of basically equal size and power. How are we going to do that? So this is part of the plan. The plan is the Iron Curtain had to come down. The Berlin Wall had to come down. How are you going to have a world government if you got a world that's split the way it is between these big powers? So, you know, what he's saying is, well, the Soviet Union was likely to remain mired in the early stages of its industrial development. I made the case that the United States could prevail peacefully in the Cold War, especially given the internal weakness of the Soviet system. But this is always planned, right? Always planned. The grand failure, the birth and death of communism in the 20th century, 1989, as the title suggests, postulated that communists had spent its force and that the world was now entering into a post-communist phase of history. The argument developed in what follows unfolds through four stages. One, 20th century politics dominated by the rise of totalitarian movements deserve to be described as a politics of organized insanity. That insanity produced not only the unparalleled bloodshed, but involved also the most ambitious attempt in mankind's history to establish total control over both the internal and external condition of the human being itself. The failed attempt to create cohesive utopias, that is, heavens on earth, on the basis of dogmatic designs of truly cosmic brazenness, prevented the rational and the idealistic impulses unleashed in Europe some 200 years ago by the French Revolution. Number two, the failure of the totalitarian experiments coincided with the political awakening of mankind on a truly global scale. This coincidence may mean that the liberal democratic framework now associated with both the French and American revolutions is potentially applicable on a worldwide basis, thereby creating the basis of a possible worldwide political consensus. However, forces globally at work could still prove more potent than integrative forces. The global relevance of the West's political message could be vitiated by the growing tendency in the advanced world to infuse the inner content of liberal democracy with a lifestyle that I define as permissive cornucopia. The priority given to individual self-gratification, combined with the growing capacity of the human being to reshape itself through genetic and other forms of scientific self-alteration, with neither subject to control moral restraint, tend to create a condition in which little self-control is exercised over the dynamics of the desire to consume and to tinker with the self. In contrast, outside the richer West, much of the human life is still dominated by fundamental concerns with survival and not cornucopious consumption. These divergent trends undermine and inhibit global consensus and hence the dangers inherent to deepening global cleavage. 3. Today, the United States stands as the only truly global power, but it does so in a setting in which traditional international politics are being transformed into global politics. Politics that are, and I hope they don't kill me on, okay, we're still going here, I haven't hit a dead page, becoming under the influence of modern communications and increasing economic interpretation, I can't say that, as an expanded process, obliterating the distinction between the domestic and the international. Inherent in this is the potential for the emergence of a genuine global community. The question arises whether a global power that is not guided by a globally relevant set of values can for long exercise its predominance. To be sure, American power is real, and in fact it is unlikely to be challenged in the foreseeable future by any of its potential rivals. Neither Japan nor Europe, for reasons stated in this section, are in fact likely to displace America. In that sense, the U.S. global position is historically unique. But many of the weaknesses of the permissive cornucopia represent the potentially defined trend in the current American culture. Unless there is some deliberate effort to reestablish the centrality of some moral criteria for the exercise of self-control over gratification as an end in itself, the phase of American predominance may not last long, despite the absence of any self-evident replacement. Number 4, although a single and increasingly interdependent global political process is emerging, Americans' difficulty in exercising effective global authority within it because of inner weakness derived more from culture than from economic causes could produce a situation of intensifying global instability. On the geopolitical level, that is likely to be expressed through the intensification of Eurasian regional conflicts, which are ensuing in the wake of the Soviet Union collapse. Proliferation of weapons of mass destruction makes this prospect more ominous. The crisis in the post-communist world, in the meantime, could deepen, undermining the wider global appeal of democracy and stimulating the reappearance of millennial demography. The conflicts between the North and South could also then sharpen a new coalition of the poorer nations against the rich, perhaps led by China, might then emerge. The interaction between the acceleration of our history, our increased capacities to shape the world, our rapidly expanding material desires, and our moral ambiguity is thus generating unprecedented dynamics of uncontrolled change. We are all racing into the future, but it is increasingly the pace of change and not our wills which is shaping that future. The world is rather like a plane on automatic pilot with its speed continuously accelerating, but no defined destination. To be sure, there are some hopeful signs that in the wake of Cold War's end, mankind may now be in a better position to undertake a more serious effort to organize itself as a global community. That, notwithstanding, the central fact remains that humanity's ability to define for itself a meaningful existence is increasingly threatened by the contradiction between subjective expectations and objective socio-economic conditions. Inherent in the potential collision between these two broad trends is the danger that world politics, both in terms of international affairs and the internal societal conditions, could simply spiral out of control, generating massive political disorder and philosophical confusion. This is why there is the need for a wider globally shared understanding of the purpose of political existence, that is, the condition of the human interdependence. A major step towards such understanding implies some effort at defining the proper limits, ultimately moral in character, of internal and external aspirations. This will require a conscious effort to strike a balance between wealth or between social need and personal gratification, global poverty and national wealth, irresponsibility, alteration of the physical environment, as well as even of the human being. The effort to preserve both nature's patrimony and the authenticity of human identity. This is the critical historical challenge that America now faces in the post-utopian age. The point of departure for an effective response is the recognition that only by creating a society that is guided by some shared criteria of self-restraint can it help to shape a world more truly in control of its destiny. Only with such recognition can we ensure that we will be the masters and not the victims of history as we enter the 21st century. And that is August 1992. And all boils down to I can't talk today. It all boils down to global communism, Marxism. It boils down to what they were trying to push before. Before they were trying to push it through might and force, you know. And you go back to Warburg, right? We're either going to have world government through consent or conquest. Well, the conquest thing hasn't really been working out that good for them, so they just change pace and go to consent. And this is what this is all about, is getting you to consent. Now, he says a lot of interesting things in here about, the disintegration of the moral fiber of the nations, which was done on purpose. That's one of the reasons that Hitler wanted the Jews out of Germany. They were the ones running the body houses, and they were the ones that were, destroying the moral fiber, basically. And that's what we've had here in the West for a very, very long time, the disintegration of morals, and they put that all together. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong. And it just tears the fiber apart. So then you end up with all these factions. There's no cohesion in the nation. You got this group fighting against that group, fighting against this group, fighting against that group. Now, they may not be violent fights, but they're definitely philosophical fights. And this has all been stewed up by these very people who tell you what they're worried about. They're not worried about it. They're running it. But the beauty is they tell you what they're up to. This is his personal thought process because he cares. No, he don't. He cares about the outcome and whatever they have to do to get the outcome. I mean, I found this rather interesting here when he was talking about weapons of mass destruction. Now, didn't we hear that just pounded on us? For how long before they went in and blew Iraq up? These guys write it all down. And I'm again so happy that Mr. Brzezinski died, because I would have never read his stuff. Now I have to read all his stuff, which is going to be a pain. But it's the basis of this is that we have to get a moral stance again. Okay, because everything that's going on is amoral, and without something that we can all, I don't even know how to explain that. We need something that anchors the people, I guess. And what anchored the people was the idea of a creator. Okay, something above man. Something above man. And that was taken away. And it was done so quietly, intelligently, until I don't know what the case of the generation is here today, the newest generation. But what held America together? If you go back and look at the history of North America, who was the first ones to come over here to settle these lands? Generally, they were Protestants who wanted nothing to do with the Catholics. And Martin Luther made that very clear what was wrong with the Catholics, because he was a Catholic. He was the one that started the Reformation. He saw how ugly the Catholic system was. He saw the big lie. He saw the little naked boys jumping out of the cakes in Rome. He saw all the gold. He saw the fact that when they needed more money, they created a new sin tax. And he wrote his list, stuck it on the door of the church. That's how you used to get an audience. So when the Gutenberg press kicked up, somebody got a hold of it, got a hold of a copy of it, and printed that sucker far and wide. So, our original forefathers that actually came to North America, mostly, for the most part, were Protestants. The Queen took an oath on the King James Bible, and I know men wrote the damn thing. I know it's been messed with forever. But the general idea still holds true. That God created man and gave him dominion. And that we follow the rules. Okay, God's statutes, God's regulations. That was the purpose of the divine right of kings or queens, is that they had to take an oath to become titled, to act as a proxy of Christ or God, I guess, and that they had to follow the rules and regulations, which were very, very simple. Do no harm, and treat your neighbor as you wish to be treated. How easy is that? Couldn't get any easier. But then the bankers and the lawyers appeared, and it's been downhill ever since. The oaths were broken. You were turned into a corporate entity. You were enslaved. You were turned from a man to a human, which by definition is a monkey or a great ape. And they've enslaved us through that idea all the way through. So, the churches, and it even says in the King James Bible that religion is nothing but a deception, i.e. the Roman Catholic Church. You got apparently a God, but you have I don't know how many you have. You probably had as many different ideas of religion as you do today of gender. And it was all used as deception, as it says so in the King James Bible. Religion is a deception. Don't go there. So we have all these different names of churches, different styles of worship, and all this kind of nonsense. When it all boils down, pretty simple. Treat us as we wish to be treated, and don't do any harm. Boom, done. But they fractured all this stuff. They've taken all this stuff. You can be whatever you be. You can be one of 9,000 different genders now. And you can do whatever you want as long as it's legal. Now, I read some of this last night, and I'm going to repeat some of it today because I find it very, very important. Now, we know back in the mid-19th century, they specifically state they killed God, right? because that they needed to do that to bring forward exactly what Brzezinski's talking about. The destruction of the moral fiber of the people. And they killed God because they say they couldn't bring ecology forward if God existed. But they say we don't tell people we killed God. We'll just work our way through this, right? So they killed God, but didn't tell anybody they killed God, and they didn't kill God. They just started their propaganda nonsense. And because they couldn't bring ecology forward as long as God existed. Because God created the earth and the animals and the people and all that kind of stuff, man. So they don't have any, they got no way to supersede that. So except through ecology, which is not abiding by the Creator's rules, but abiding by the rules of those who brought the ecology forward, so that you have to adhere to their rules, which is basically really a death cult when you get right down to it. And people will start to hug trees and stuff and whatnot, and freak out if you have a smoke out in an open field. And this is what the ecology thing is about. It's just another deception used for control. Now, what they did when they killed God was they switched out the priests, which were deceptive criminals, and they implanted the scientists, which are deceptive criminals. So you switched out one set of criminals or liars for another set of liars who had the capacity to control the people, but this time not through religion. Well, ecology is a religion. So you switched out the priests that were supposed to be the guardians of the Word of God, and they were supposed to tell you what it meant, and so on and so forth. And they're talking in a jargon. It's an art form, which is always using jargon, which is a language to deceive or gain advantage, gain control. And this is the same thing with science. Okay, it's the science of ecology. And they tell you that if you don't do this, well, then the world's going to end because, well, if you don't do what we say, then you will destroy the earth, and then we will all perish. So you have to do what the new priests say at all times. Now, we know they're deceivers and liars because they too speak in jargon, in the scientific language, and legalese is a jargon. All of these jargons they use, and if you look up jargon, you will find basically it's defined as a language used to gain an upper hand, and sometimes through deception. And that's exactly what it is. So now we have all of these people. The people used to go to the church, and that was their moral guide. And now they listen to the scientists, which of course are the new priests. And you couldn't deny, it was sacrilege to speak out against something a priest said, blasphemy. And it's the same thing in the science world, okay? Because they are the new priests. They said they were the new priests. And just like you couldn't deny or challenge what a priest said, you now cannot challenge what the scientific consensus says, even as it's based on total stupidity. It's not about knowledge, it's about control. And the kids are taught in school that, you know, this great scientist said that, or this or that, or whatever. But you're not to question it, right? Just like you weren't to question the priest. Don't question. You question the priest? What are you, nuts? You question science? You question global warming? You freaking heathen! And this is the pushback from these people. But I generally spit in the general direction of science as I spit in the general direction of priests. I don't like liars and I don't like deceivers. And I don't like the way they manipulate people's minds because it harms people. And the law, according to the Creator, says don't harm anybody. And that's what they do. That's their business. So, I used to spend a lot of time at the Rockefeller Foundation and read through some of their papers. And the one I really, really appreciated, it really says how they do this. It was a story about the Ganges River and how it's polluted and this and that and the other thing. And into the future, there's a girl standing up on a pathway or whatever, away from the river. And the river is so clean now and beautiful. But she understands she can never go to the river because she understands that she and her fellow men and women and children harmed the river in the past, and therefore they have a duty not to harm the river again, and that they can look at the river, but they can't go to the river in case they might cause it some harm. And they had made up a whole bunch of scenarios on how they would get to that position. And that was one of the scenarios that they came up with. And then this is all propagated through the schools and through the universities, and then the people in the universities become university professors who are puking off this ridiculous philosophies and so on and so forth. And then you live in a totalitarian system again. The very system that Brzezinski says didn't work. Well, they tried to do it through force. And they found out it didn't work. So, like what Warburg said, consent or conquest. Well, they tried the conquest crap. And it worked to a point, but it's very messy. It's very, very messy. So it's easier just to get people to consent to their total global enslavement. And that's what this is all about. It's an option. It's a different scenario. But you're still taking the same place. As I said, you're on a plane and the speed keeps increasing, but you got no defined destination. Well, they have a defined destination for you, which is basically 1984, to put it in most simple terms. And we've allowed ourselves to be put on that plane. Chaos out of order, I guess you could call it, is the plane flying at an unreasonable speed, ever increasing with no particular destination, because everything's spinning out of control, and it's not till it settles down and calms down and becomes quiet do we see what came out of the chaos. And what we want coming out of the chaos is what they planned, basically 1984, where everywhere and everything is the same. Now, if you are a thinking man or woman, you know you don't want this. So we have to change it. And he also says something, political. Talk about political influences in that. And he's absolutely correct. I can't thank Brzezinski enough for dying. You know what? I really can't. I have this appreciation for the man all of a sudden because he dropped some important stuff that, again, I would not have likely read had he not died. I knew he was an evil son of a bitch. But his writings are very interesting. And they say an awful lot. And they tell us how stupid we are, and that's a good thing, because we got to understand how stupid we've been. Like, people are always blaming politicians. Well, whose fault is it? Theirs? Of course not. It's ours. It's always going to be our fault because we allowed that to happen. Always our fault. So the problem is us, and the solution is us. Now, he talks about political influence, and that's exactly true. Most people don't want to even run for their local council. And that is, believe it or not, where all of the power sits. Okay? Because that's where the people live. That's the power base. So we have to influence from some perspective. Now, we have to regain our moral fiber. We have to go back to understanding what is right and what is wrong. We got to understand the difference between black and white. We got to understand that this massive gray area in between black and white is what influences people. That's the change agent place, if you will. It's that gray area. Now, I said years and years and years ago, and I stand by it today, because this is a psychological, spiritual war, or spiritual psychological war. And we're a very weak people. And like last night when I was reading, somewhere else in this particular book, of the, hundreds of millions of people that died throughout the 20th century in the bloodbaths as they tried to control the world through conquest. But there was also a bigger plan behind that, because it was the strongest, brightest young men who were sent to be slaughtered. And that was done to weaken the West, to weaken the strength of the West, to weaken the breeding stock of the West, so that the West could be more easily overcome. You slaughter all these people, and then you bring forward the United Nations, and this is going to be the organization that gives you peace and your utopia, and all this kind of nonsense, all planned by these clowns. It's all about a totalitarian government, world government. That's all it's ever been about. But he is absolutely correct about the political part. There's I don't know who said it, but you're either going to affect politics or you're going to be affected by politics. Now, we have hundreds of millions of people whining and bitching and complaining and protesting and signing petitions and whatnot. Oh, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. Well, yeah, you are going to take it some more, because you've been taking it all along. Then you'll rise up and you'll protest and you'll fill out petitions and you'll sign this and that because we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. But you do. Nothing has ever, ever, ever been accomplished through protest or petitions. Not unless they set it up ahead of time. The players. There have been a few things accomplished by protest, but it wasn't an accomplishment that was created by the people. It was a protest that was created by the controllers in order to push something. That's what all these NGOs are about. To push from the bottom. These guys push from the top. And then the government goes, well, this is what the people want. They want 9,000 genders. And we got to show respect to Bruce Jenner. He's a brave boy, man, woman, boy, girl, well, whatever it is. We have to show respect. The kind of garbage that goes on. So these guys are extremely intelligent. That I can't take away from them. They are extraordinarily evil. That I would like to take away from them. But they have the capacity to, what I used to say a long time ago, okay, is that psychology is a pretty powerful tool. Propaganda, which is really just a form of psychology, is a very powerful tool. And I am absolutely convinced that you can take pretty much anybody, not everybody. We don't need everybody. We just need the masses. And those who we can't get to, well, we can just say, well, that's an idiot because everybody else agrees with global warming. But you can take pretty much any man, woman, or child and you can isolate them. And that's what propaganda does. That's what the school system does. It isolates. And you can pretty much take anybody and isolate them and ask them, what color is this piece of paper? White. And what color is this piece of paper? Black. Okie dokie. Now I can isolate that individual. And some will succumb quicker than others. But in most cases, most will succumb to the propaganda, to the psychology. And at some point, I will say to that man or woman or child, I'll say, what color is that? Black. And what color is this? White. Now we reversed it. It's still white, but they're calling it black. Still black, but they're calling it white. Now that we've got them in this position, and psychology again says that once a mind has accepted a lie as a truth, it's extremely difficult for the mind to throw out the lie and accept the actual truth. They will hug the lie. Just like the people hug the global warming lie and the renewable energy lie and the we need a global government lie and all the rest of this nonsense. Once a mind has accepted the propaganda as truth, and this has been experimented, is it extremely difficult for the mind to let go of the lie and replace it with the actual truth. You can set, if you ever had a debate with somebody about global warming, most any of these things are pushing. It's crazy land. I've gotten into conversations with psychologists and scientists and all kinds of weird people, and it's almost painful to watch these people hug on to the lie. Usually they'll end up at the end running away, and I've done this on Facebook many times in different places on blogs and that. And I'm a professor of this or that, or I know this or that, and when you finally nail them, they will erase everything, all the entire conversation. They will just erase it because they can't deal with it. So, this is basically what we're into here now, I suppose, is a massive, massive, massive deprogramming problem that we have. We have to deprogram the masses. No, you won't deprogram them all, just like you can't propagandize them all, and you don't need them all. But Brzezinski's absolutely correct about the political influence. They influence it. We don't. We find ourselves in the position we are because they influence it. We don't. We whine and bitch and complain like a bunch of little children, which we've been taught to do, and we do it very well. We don't accomplish anything by it, but we put ourselves in a position that they have easy control of us. They understand the mind. They understand how to use propaganda. And that's all they have really on their side at this point. They can't really bomb the West. Okay, so they got to use consent. They got to use psychology and spirituality to take us down, to get us to agree, to get us to consent. And silence is consent, and we have been silent. Oh yeah, we yell and we scream and we bitch and complain and we have conversations about this and that at the coffee shops and at work and whatnot, but it only lasts. It's all reactionary. Because as fast as there's a new ball game or a hockey game, the conversation changes to that. As soon as there's a great new celebrity, one either rises rapidly or dies, that's the conversation. It's always reactionary. They just keep sticking this stuff in your face and you react to it. And the next day you'll react to something else. And the next day you'll react to something else. And you never get your footing. And that's what they depend on, you never getting your footing, never getting your feet planted hard on the ground. And planted so hard that all of this stuff that's flying around doesn't affect the big picture. The big picture is that we have got to get our nations back. And the only place, well, there's actually two places. One is politics, and the other is realizing that we're men and not humans, which means that we're going to move away from their stupid Darwinism, their ecology, and that's where ecology came from, was exactly the same time as Darwinism in the mid-19th century, which is exactly the same time they killed God. So we have to reverse this idea that we were evolved from apes and go back to the original understanding that God created man and God gave man dominion. That means no one else can have dominion over you. As long as you follow the simple rules, don't do any harm, and treat your neighbor as you wish to be treated. Makes it really simple. And the other is the politics. And it's so easy. I mean, you know, everybody's bitching and complaining. And the solution is right there in front of your frickin' faces, and it is so inexpensive to pull off. It is ridiculous. You don't need to be of, some ridiculously high IQ. You don't even have to be politically intelligent or knowledgeable. But if you look at local politics, it's pretty simple. They have a municipal codes, a municipal act, which ain't that big. And the point is that we get control of the voting. Because these ideas that come out of the camp, like Brzezinski at the Trilateral Commission, and was attached to a whole bunch of other different international bodies, and the Rockefellers and all these guys, all of what they are pushing is being implemented at the local level, global to local, giving global the power over all local. Why would we put up with that shit? Why don't we go get control of the local, then we control our nations? And we can tell the globalists to take a flying leap, which we need to do. And I've said it before, I'm going to keep on saying it. I mean, we have municipal elections here in Ontario in 2018. Find out when yours are and prepare for it. And get your people together and go. Now, mathematics is an amazing animal. Very simple to understand, really. But if you want to get control of your local council, which means you got control of your municipality, okay, that's a powerful position. You control your local municipality. Now, you're always in the child position of the state, which created the municipalities. The municipalities are not even recognized as government. They're just an offshoot corporation. But the state or the province does have the authority because they created you, and you are supposed to be beholden to the desires of your parent. You are supposed to show your parent respect, and therefore your parent has control over the municipal councils. And they can, and they have. They did it just up the road here, not too far, an hour away from here or so. When a council some years ago stood up against amalgamation, which is really Sovietization, stood up totally against the amalgamation or the regionalization, which is what is known as today, which is still Sovietization. We're all run by boards and committees. The elected really don't have the power they used to, or they still have the power, but they don't know how to exercise it. The power has been handed over to the city managers / CAOs. They're the ones who are not elected, but they're the ones who run the elected. That's got to change. Now, the only way you're going to change that is if you have control of the municipal council. That means a town city council. Otherwise, you're going to get Brzezinski, and they're already running your local neighborhood. They run it because they're the ones that are coming up with this crap, which filters its way down to the local level, global to local. But it's too simple. I mean, you think about it. If I walk down the street and I talk to 10 people or 20 people, I mean, people are getting around this global warming crap now, but still, they may agree with you one-on-one, but if you put them in a crowd of global warmers, they will because they're weak. Even though in their gut they know this is a fraud, they will still not speak up because they don't want to be ostracized or centered out or any of that kind of thing. They're not strong people. They're weak of spirit, mind, and spine, and we have to strengthen those spirits, minds, and spines if we're going to get anything accomplished. And that means we need foot soldiers, okay? Not with rifles, with knowledge. Knowledge. We have to encourage these people. But simple math. Okay, so I walk down the street and I'm anti-gender, like there's two, male and female. And people, you can't say things like that anymore. Why? Well, because they passed a law, right? Are you happy with it? No. Why don't you do something about it? Oh, we can't do nothing about it. Damn, people, come on. Come on. The fact is, we have to have political influence. Now, we're not going to be, any of us are not ever going to be the advisors of the presidents or the prime ministers. That ain't going to happen. Therefore, we're going to have to be the advisors of our local communities, which is the municipality. Okay? So now we can advise the people. We can explain to the people why things are the way they are and to come together and how we're going to change it. Very, very powerful. Now, you send one person out to run whose message is going dead against what the other counselors are saying, and the media is saying, and the churches for the most part are going to be saying, you don't stand much of a chance of getting elected. Although people are slowly waking up. So your message that would have just hit a brick wall 10 years ago is going to get you some votes today. But the point is that the media is on the opposite side. They push the globalist agenda, as does the churches, and so on and so forth, and the schools. So you kind of like odd man out. So how do you change this? Well, you don't be the odd man out. A council of 7 people requires a majority vote of 4. 4 seats. Next time you're in a restaurant or somewhere, look at 4 empty seats. That's it. That's the power base. Those 4 stinking seats, fill them. Now you control it. If you don't have any control, you don't have any influence, you don't have any power, you can't fight back. Oh, well, you could go get a gun, I guess, but that ain't going to turn out well. They're wondering why you're taking so long to start shooting. They're thinking they dumbed you down too far now. But they want you shooting, and you don't want to be shooting because that's their end. To further separate and divide and conquer. They're doing what they're doing to us quietly, really. With their political influence in that. So we do the same thing. So the magic number is 3. The magic deal is to overcome the message that you're trying to overcome, which you know is the wrong message, which you know is destroying the future of your children, your grandchildren, and your nation. And you think you can't do anything about it. Well, you can do everything about it. There's 4 empty chairs there. That's your power base in your municipality or your city or your town, whatever you want to call it. They're all municipalities. So how do you overpower the message? Simple. You run 12 candidates to fill those 4 chairs. Now you have 12 people out knocking the doors, 12 people who got media now, right? Because when you run, you're going to be on the radios, the local radios, you're going to be in the local media, you're going to be interviewed. But now there's not just you, right? Well, we understand that you don't believe in global warming. Is that correct? That is correct. Well, everybody else agrees. Well, not really. They don't. Well, the scientists all agree. Well, whatever. But you got nowhere to go with that shit. Because the other candidates are going, well, well, there's a lunatic. Only a retard would say global warming ain't real. So it's a very difficult game to play. But when you have 12 or more people knocking the doors who can explain to people why their hydro bills are going through the ceiling, why their water bills are going through the ceiling, why their kids are being feminized in the schools, why the church is the way they are, whatever question it is that they might come up with that they see as a issue, you can discuss it with them. Now, when one discusses it with them and the others are all banging the doors who have the opposite message, then your message will get buried. You know, you will have the people say, you know, even when I ran, I had to write a piece in the local paper, and the editor said, of everything that was written in this paper, Ron is the only one making any sense. But then they turned around and bastardized because I don't know if they got a phone call or what, but it was kind of weird. But the fact is that once you have enough people with the same message, you see, one person comes and, well, I'll tell you why this is your issue. I'll tell you what the deal is on it and why it is the way it is. You may never have heard of it because it's not propagated in the media, but this is the reality of it. Now, Martha and Ed might be having dinner, say that guy or gal that come to the door, they're making a lot of sense. Making a lot of sense, but then they're bombarded with the other side of the message, which they've been bombarded with for so long, and then they succumb to that, and they become they just go with the flow. But if you have 12 people we only want 4 seats. You only need 4 seats. If you got 12 people out there talking, what's your issue? And they say, and they're basically getting the same message from those 12 people. The other counselor's message is diluted to the point where your message stands above and is more important because it makes more sense to these people. You will get the seats. You will get the seats. And we almost have to make this like a disease going across our nations. We want to infect every municipality, regardless of where it is, with the same attitude. We're taking them back. The municipalities are ill. They've got a global infection. And we're the cure. And the people will rise. And they will come together in the communities because those controlling the communities are a very tiny faction of the communities. You have your BIAs and you have your kinsman clubs and you have your church clubs and this and that. But they contain so few people that once you have control, it's easy to get your message out because it's your message now. You got 4 years of message. You got 4 years to strengthen the people, 4 years to turn this mess around. And as municipalities begin to put the right people, moral people, into positions of power at the local level, the more you will encourage others to step forward. And now we have a situation of you'll either affect politics or you will be affected by politics. All of a sudden, you have made this the go-to fun thing to do, more or less. Okay? You want to turn it into a craze. You want this thing to move, Yo-yos. What the hell was a yo-yo? And all of a sudden, yo-yos are everywhere when I was a kid. Same thing with a hula hoop. Same thing with this. The lawn darts didn't work out so good. But all of this stuff it becomes popular. And that's what we want to do with local politics. We want to make it popular. We don't want to make it mysterious. And it's always been mysterious for people. Most people don't have a sweet bejesus what goes on at a town hall. So we want to get it to the point where it becomes popular, the thing to do. Because that's our control over our municipality, over our towns, over our cities. And we are the power because there's no people at the state or federal levels. There's no people there. There's no people there. All the people live in a municipality. And once we have control of that, then it becomes very, very simple to give the middle finger to the state and or the federal government. Because we, the people who control the municipalities, have spoken. And we ain't going or doing what you are propagating at us. We're not going there. It's like the Great Awakening, but you got to awaken them at a certain levels. And we're in a perfect position to do it now because people are being pushed against the wall harder and harder every day. Which means that every day more and more people are asking questions. And the beautiful thing about a question is it forces you to go look for an answer. Now, over the years, those who can answer the questions have grown. There's more people today that could intelligently answer a question from an average constituent at their door than ever before. You are the leaders. Don't sit on your knowledge. Don't hold your knowledge in your back pocket. A lot of people have spent a lot of time going through a lot of stuff so that they could understand what's going on. This is not a time to be shy. This is a time to bring your knowledge forth and share it with people that don't have any knowledge. They know there's problems. They got all kinds of questions. They don't have any answers. They don't know where to go get the answers. So you people really have to become the teachers. And you are the ones that are going to have to stand out in front. Because you, with the knowledge, are the ones that are going to have to lead. And if you're not prepared to lead, well, then you might as well go jump off a tall building because you've just proven yourself to be useless to yourself and your fellow man. And you're no worth whatsoever. Your job is to teach. Keep talking, teaching, and shining the light. That's our job. Now, Brzezinski said some other stuff in here, and I said it last night, but I think I'll go back and see if I can't track it down again. And I'll get back to the contents here. I love these titles. I'm gonna read these titles again, and I really encourage people to read some of these books, but understand, who wrote it. Okay, understand how it's written, why it was written, the actual message contained in it. Okay, but I love these titles. The Century of Megadeath. That was the 20th century where they killed all the good young men and women. The Centrality of Meta-Myth. Coercive Utopia. The Victory of Small Beliefs. Permissive Cornucopia, which I read last night. We had most of it. Some of the pages are missing. Philosophical Polarization. Paradox of Global Power. The Dissonant Message. Just a second here. I got to get this call. Hello? Hey, can I call you back? I got a half hour or so to doing the show, and then I know we'll talk about that. All right, I'll get back to you as soon as the show's over. Okay, apology for that, but we're just setting up. We have to go to Newmarket early in the morning tomorrow to see what we can do to help out Michael Schmidt, who they're trying to bring a injunction against tomorrow, which they probably will, considering the judges are paid by the government, and it's the government is protecting monopoly who wants to shut Michael down forever and all time. So hopefully an awful lot of people show up there tomorrow, which I do believe they will. But this is about being engaged, right? So then we have this continuous with the paradox of global power, the dissonant message, the faceless rival, the geopolitical vacuum, the vengeful phoenix, the giant of global inequality. Geez, doesn't that sound great? The illusion of control, right? And all of these guys like Rockefeller and that, they base themselves on, own nothing, control everything. And that's basically what we're fighting on Michael's side here. The government has arbitrarily made a monopoly through the Milk Marketing Board based on something happened in 1920s, 1930s, the swill milk houses that poisoned and actually killed a lot of people, but it wasn't milk. And the government at that time knew that these places were dangerous, but let it ride out, because if we can make people sick, then we can force pasteurization, and then we can get control. And that's what it's all about. It's all about control. And it's the same thing with global warming. It doesn't matter how many facts are thrown in front of the government's face as far as milk goes. They're still propagating. It's as ridiculous as global warming. This milk deal, right? They're coming, say, well, even if somebody drank milk and you didn't, and you get within a certain proximity of them and they breathe on you, you could get a disease and die. Really? That's how ludicrous this nonsense is. It just reminds me of global warming crap. So I have a huge fight. Michael's been fighting for 23 years. He's been beat up, harassed, jailed. I don't know how many raids were on the farm. And nobody has ever become ill. And it's not just the milk, right? I mean, the foods they make there, which are all, the butter and the breads, and it's just the food so freaking good. It's ridiculous. But the government doesn't want you having good food. They like to poison you, and they don't like competition, so they will thump you. And unfortunately, Canadians have a bad habit. North Americans have a bad habit. People in general have a bad habit of laying down when they should be standing up. And that's what we have to change. So I'm going to try. Where was this? The Permissive Cornucopia. I read some of this last night. And there's some very, very interesting stuff in here. And it tells you what they did and why they did it. Now I'm just going to read the first bit of this. Okay, I got Chris coming in here, but I'm still going to read this. Like, he can just sit there and listen, because I want to read at least this page. Hey, Christopher, how are you?
Hey, bud.
Yeah, I just want to read this first bit, which I know I read last night. But I want to put this in the chat. I want you people to go through Brzezinski's books here. They're not that big a book. A great deal depends here on how the advanced West reacts to the disappearance of the communist ideological challenge. Will the values of the pluralistic and free market society strike a viable balance between individual desire for material self-enhancement and the need to infuse into life an answer's awareness of its transcendental dimensions? The dilemma was posted well by Nobel laureate Milius, who wrote in mid-1991 that Marxism always seemed to me to be a consequence of the profound erosion of man's religious imagination on the European continent. He understood this when in The Possessed he depicted in prophetic shorthand the actions of revolutionaries engaged in an attempt to give meaning to history in a world without God. In this sense, totalitarian movements had a metaphysical background stamped with a minus sign and can be counted among the manifestations of European nihilism. The erosion of the religious imagination is, in my view, the core of 20th century thought, and it is what has lent our age to its apocalyptic features. But the dissolution of totalitarian movements by no means suggests that a fundamental change has taken place in this regard. It is enough to look at the preposterous and well-fed sector of humanity, or prosperous, what the hell am I saying? Well-fed sector of humanity in the countries of the West to become convinced that the concept of a religiously ordered cosmos is disintegrating also under the impact of science and technology, and that its people, especially among the young generation, still have a strong need for faith. It is a homeless, groping faith that does not necessarily turn to Christianity. And right there is the religious order cosmos is disintegrating also under the impact of science and technology. The scientists are the new priests. Okay, so of course it's disintegrating. It's meant to disintegrate. I mean, all you got to do is look around at your society now. It's a freaking disaster. And it ain't by accident. It's not a natural progression of life that's taking place. This is extremely controlled. Okay, they got you worshiping the earth. Okay? Not the creator. They got you worshiping the creation, not the creator. And because there's no creator law left, and it says in here too somewhere, and that's really, really important, it says about Michael's trial. Okay? The moral value has been removed from good and bad, and or good and evil, whatever, to what is legal and illegal. Okay? So your government has become the church. They decide what is good and what is evil. And in the case of Michael, the scientists who are back in the Milk Marketing Board and pasteurization, well, you can't deny them this because they're the priests. So you can't argue with these people. Well, you can, but the deal is that the deck is stacked. And the judges who make the decision are paid by the government who tells you what is legal and illegal. Now, when you have God in the picture, the whole raw milk situation changes totally. Because in the King James Bible, I don't remember what verse it is, but it says that God created the cow and God created the grass, and the cow's to eat the grass and you're to feed from it. Well, the cow eats the grass and produces what? Milk, of which you're to eat from it. And nobody's ever gotten sick from the raw milk. In fact, raw milk is extraordinarily safe. But the science says, oh, no. If somebody drinks milk and breathes on it, you'll likely die. And if global warming, if the earth warms to 2 degrees centigrade, you'll die. And you're supposed to believe this shit. right? Which is total nonsense. So I'm going to put this this book in the. You can go back to the beginning of it or whatever. I'm going to put this in the chat. And again, I want to thank. I really do. I really want to thank Mr. Brzezinski for dying, because I would not have looked at this had he not died. So I appreciate it. So, give me a week or so to get through Brzezinski, and then Mr. Kissinger, you have my, best wishes for you to die, and I'll read your shit. And we'll be back on this stuff done. Anyways, that's the book, Brzezinski's book that was written in 92, 93. Very interesting stuff in it. Hope everybody reads it. Hope everybody understands it. Read his other books, earlier books, because you will find a progression that has taken place. It is where we are today, which has to be fixed, and we'll go from there. Anyways, I don't want to talk about that no more. I got Chris on the horn. Duck me, brother.
Yeah, you were talking about bread before all that stuff that I got confused about.
Bread.
Table bread. Bread you eat for life and living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again is completely controlled system.
Well, I got a couple slices of bread that I forgot about in a plastic bag that I left on the counter underneath I guess you would call it a fresh loaf of bread, which has been around for 3 weeks. And that bread's not blue molding on me.
Well, no, we designed the bread now for your protection and a longer shelf life, forever, really. Don't
it's
try
like that McDonald's thing. Remember the guys that saved hamburgers and all that stuff? They put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And 15 years later, it still looks the same.
Yeah.
That's my bread's the same way.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at how many people, I mean, it's like everything else. I mean, the bread industry, the milk industry, there's so few players in it. In Ontario, there's only one player in it, and that's the government. But when I look at the bread trucks around here, there's only like 2 bread trucks, and it's all poison wheat. So yeah, it shouldn't go moldy. I mean, when I was a kid, you had to eat your bread an X number of days, or it would go moldy. You had to drink your milk an X number of days, or it would go bad.
When you were a kid, they used to deliver your milk with glass bottles with a truck.
Yes, they did, actually. I'm an old man. and they delivered your bread. I mean, grocery stores were really just starting to pick up. There were no grocery stores till 45, I think, was the number, 1945. And it was about control the food, control the people. That's what Kissinger said, and that's exactly what they've done. They've controlled the people through the food. And they tell you what you can and can't eat. And they don't encourage you to eat anything good. Look at the new scientific progress we've made on this slice of bread. Chris bought this. When did you buy that, Chris? 3 months ago? Look at that. That piece of bread looks like you bought it yesterday. Now that's science on your side, boys and girls. But shouldn't it go bad? No. Don't complicate things. Don't ask us questions. Did we tell you we're the new priests? Just shut up and eat your bread. We got to change this around. We have to change this around.
It was really sad this morning. I was listening to your show last night. Actually, I think I might have been on it. But this morning I woke up and I took my dog out back about 7 o'clock this morning, and I looked up and I had these new clouds.
New what?
New clouds in the sky.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to thank science for that, because we used to just have the old clouds. Now we have new clouds, and I want to thank science for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, they were crisscross. It looked like X and O's. Like I could literally, start playing a game in X and O's. That's how bad it was. The spraying was here.
Oh, I remember that here when I quit golfing pretty close. We're out in the golf course and my kind of half nephew or whatever, we were out there and he had 2 young kids and it's just like you would do. They were absolutely X and O in the sky, right? And I said, look, and it killed me because he couldn't look up. He couldn't look up. The planes were just nailing us, right?
Mm.
You don't
traffic.
No, he couldn't look up. He was a typical Canadian. He knows it's there, but if he looks at it, then he has to acknowledge it's there, right? Then he has to deal with it. And he doesn't want to deal with it. So you're not going to look at it. And that's what we're so good at, is ignoring what's right in our face. I mean, if you can ignore chemtrails, you can ignore just about anything, can't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I have.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah. My second eldest boy. I tell him that every day when we're going to work. Look up. And he goes. He doesn't even look up. He just says, "Yeah, whatever, Dad."
Yeah.
I mean, it's acclimation. It's something that they've been doing to us for such a long time that our children don't have no clue of what their parents are talking about, and they think they're crazy. And that's
but even
my youngest one is actually more awake because he's starting to figure it out.
This is what I'm finding. The kids that I talked to that were in grade 9, the kids I talked to like 10 years ago that were in grade 9 were really daft, right? They all loved David Suzuki and all. It was really weird. And Al Gore was a hero. It was strange. But now when I'm talking to the kids who are in grade 9, they're coming around. They really, truly are coming around. And it's the idea that propaganda is the best before date's over. It's starting to get moldy, right?
Unlike our bread.
Unlike our bread and our hamburgers, yeah. It's so those kids, I think there's enough information out now. Maybe some of them are tripping over some of it, and maybe some of them are having conversations with their friends. But I'm finding that the children today, or they're not even kids. I wasn't a kid. I didn't consider myself a kid when I was in grade 9. But they seem more open. When I would try to discuss something with them or ask them questions or that when 10 years ago, say, they would basically, they didn't want to engage at all. They just shut up. They didn't want nothing to do with it. Now I'm asking the exact same questions I was asking them 10 years ago, and I'm getting the kids, their eyes look brighter. They look more intuitive. They look more willing to listen. They actually respond, which they didn't used to do before. So yeah, we're going to win this. There's no ifs and buts. We just have to. Us old buggers just got to get down in the trenches with the kids the best we can, and encourage them. And it's it's like Suzuki said, right? We got to get the kids, right? We got to get the kids. Now, even when I was a kid, when I was 14, 13, 12, the Beatles were out and the Stones were out and all this stuff was going on and the Vietnam War, and my mom was still listening to the Everly Brothers and Elvis Presley, and they were square and I wasn't, and they didn't know anything and I knew everything. I mean, it's a generational thing, right? But they controlled the generations, right? Okay, the propagandists and the movers and the shakers, they control each generation. They put something new in front of each generation, And I don't think they got nothing new left to shove in front of the new generation. They're still pumping the stuff that they were pumping 2 generations ago.
Well, they think their job is done. They think they got us.
Well, I think they got nowhere left to go.
Well, no, I feel that their shelf life of propaganda is at the peak.
Yeah. And it's they've pushing the Sharia stuff now, right? Which is kind of funny. I have a really quick story, really fast story. Just before we go on air today, my wife was talking about she has to work on Tuesday because the girl who's supposed to be there isn't going to be there on Tuesday. She won't be back. I guess she graduated from college or something, and then she went to Morocco, and I guess had a very difficult time with the society there, and they were not living in hotels and that. They were living with the Moroccan people, and apparently they don't even have a toilet. She said they have to pee in a hole in the floor, and I think the whole thing, this society she got thrown into, and the foods and all that kind of stuff. I guess she got ill, and they had to get her out of there and send her to France or something. But then she don't like that either, what she sees there, right? So this is a good thing because they've been sending the kids overseas, right, to kind of get them into the multiculturalism mode. And here's a girl they sent there that doesn't want anything to do with it. She just wants to come home to her nation and have things normal, right? And so that's the whole point of separate nations, is that you do what you want. You want to pee in a hole in the floor, fill your boots, right? But don't bring it here, right? So the multiculturalism thing, I think, is also hitting the end of its line, because it's caused so many problems. So,
well, it's funny with you look at the African nations, and sorry to say it, but they don't have a lot of monoliths or big structures that have survived for 800 years. They had tents. And I think Zimbabwe is the only one of the African nations I can think of that actually has something you can go and look at that was built a long time ago. But sorry to say, but that was built by white European men.
Well, yeah, but you see, the problem is I was talking to a kid from Africa last, I guess, Friday or whatever. Talked to him for about an hour and a half at the Ministry of Health, the Federal Ministry of Health, and it was weird because when we were done, and he was putting his arguments forward, right? Because he's only 25, he has weird arguments, and he was putting his arguments forward and kept knocking them down, and he said, "I'm starting to understand what you're saying now, right?" But we talked about Africa a little bit, and I said, like Africa was in the condition it's in because they weren't left alone, right? All of the resources are controlled from the outside, which he agreed. They have no control over anything in their own countries. And their politics, their people, are all working for the people that are keeping them down. So, but at the same token, Africa, the people in Africa, they say, well, if it wasn't for us, the Africans would all starve to death. Bullshit. Africans have been there forever. Now, they have their nations, and they live the way they wish to live, and they were quite happy. It reminds me of that stupid movie with the Coke bottle that fell out of the gods must be crazy, right? It's stupid. The people are all happy. It goes back to this consumerism, like Brzezinski's talking about. Okay, the community or the tribe or whatever, they're all happy. They all know what they do. They all work together. They all look out for each other. And all of a sudden, a Coke bottle falls out of the sky, and it's something new, and it's shiny, and it's clear, and it's different, and it's amazing, and everybody wants it. And I'll start fighting over it. And they destroyed their tribe over a Coke bottle. And this kind of goes back to they lost their moral. They lost their moral guidepost, which is basically what Brzezinski's saying. And so that's how easy it is to get inside and infect a society. And they know it. So, but it was weird because at the end of that conversation, and it lasted for an hour and a half, which is weird because people kept trying to get the young guy off the phone because these calls aren't supposed to go on that long. You're just supposed to say, you can't help you, hit the road. That's the general attitude at these ministry offices. But, in the end, he says, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. And he really freaked me out because he ended with, may God bless you, right? Because I explained to him that the same thing that happened in Africa is now happening here, okay? And you probably can see it better than the average Canadian can because you ain't been here as long, right? And he gets it. He gets it. So, this idea, why did we build, houses instead of living in a tent? Well, simple. The weather conditions dictate that. Okay. If I'm in a warm climate and I can live in a mud hut quite happily and I don't need a TV and I know how to get my food and I know how to enjoy my life, then why do I need a castle? I don't. Right. So, we have to, that's why the nations are different. Right. And they're trying to make all the nations the same. That's a disaster. That's a virus. That's bad news. Because if you try to make everybody and everything the same, then it's not going to be too damned interesting, is it? Because somebody's controlling it all. And that don't work out well for anybody. So, if the Africans, leave them alone. I've always been pissed about Africa. Leave it alone, right?
Well, what about South Africa?
What about it? Leave it alone.
Yeah, well, Africa's for the blacks, apparently. But South Africa, there was white people actually helping to feed all of Africa down there. Now they're genociding all the white people.
That's what you were told, Chris.
That's what I was told?
Yeah.
No, my research tells me that, Ron, not what I was told.
The whites came to South Africa specifically to help the African people who were starving to death. I have a hard time with that one. That's right up there with the Auschwitz story. No, this is always about conquest and control and colonialism. It's like, the story of China, that they didn't build the wall to keep the people in. They built the wall to keep the sons of bitches out that would come in and try to change their society. It's like, Yuri Brezhnev when he was talking about Japan. And they wanted their own culture. They didn't want the influence of the West, right? They didn't want it in there.
All right.
They eventually got in there, and they got into China as well. And
let's go with that,
how many people died in China, and not because of the Chinese particularly, but because of the outside influences into China.
Okay, let's go with that.
And it's not white people, okay? It's not white people. It's evil people.
No, it's not. The point I'm trying to make is, but it's okay for us to take in everybody, but you want Africa to stay black, you want Asia to stay Asian.
I didn't say any of that.
But
I
as soon
said
as
that
we
is
move
what
into
a nation. That is what it. I don't want anybody here.
We're the bad guys.
I don't want anybody here, right? I mean, we came here to get away from the tyranny we were living under, which is the same tyranny you're talking about in Africa, right? Okay, so we came here to get away from the tyranny. We came here to live a life, a moral life, and it wasn't us that genocided the Indians, and it wasn't you and I that genocided the black people, right? A very small clique of extremely evil people that come in all colors. Now, as far as the native people are concerned, this nonsense. The Christians wiped out the natives. No, they didn't. Right? Some very evil people using the title of Christianity wiped those people out. The original settlers here got along just fine with the natives. They depended upon the natives. They would have never survived without the natives. So it's like bullshit on steroids as far as these globalists are concerned. And they've always been the globalists that caused all the problems. Those who wish to control everything. Why do we have different nations? Because we have different cultures. And where do cultures belong? They belong in their own nations. Once you destroy the culture, that is genocide. That's what we did to the native people. And that's why I keep bringing that lady up from the reserve that was so highly intelligent when I asked her if she understood the plan for Whitey. And she had no problem. She didn't have to think about it, Christ. She just nodded her head yes. And I said, why do you get it so easy and talking to Whitey like beating your head on the wall? Simple, she says. We lived through it. Now it's your turn. Now, that's all we got to understand. Okay? This is all we got to understand, is we are under attack. And we're either going to stand up and we're going to protect our nations, and we're going to kick the evil out of our nations, and we're going to take back our nations, or we are not going to survive this. Okay, here I got this from Hal. The information I have found says that the blacks in South Africa are killing the whites and the food production the whites provided and not replacing it. Yes. Okay. But who's behind it? That's the question. Who's behind it? That's the question. It's not what's going on. It's who's facilitated this.
Well,
right?
they're asking. They're starting to ask to keep some of the whites there so that they can keep them fed. They realize their mistake because they can't take care of themselves.
Bull.
They cannot.
Of course they can. I mean, for God's sake.
Yeah, living in mud huts and going back to full circle.
That is so wrong. It's ridiculous. Do you think there's no black people? Do you think there's no black people on the planet that know how to make a bread machine? Come on, give me a break. That's total propaganda. That is total and complete propaganda. This idea that without the whites, the blacks can't do anything. Give me a break.
And you like Pastor Manning.
Who?
Pastor Manning.
Who's Pastor Manning? Oh,
yeah.
I had him on this show once. Interesting gentleman. Huh?
Well, he's going totally against everything you just said.
Oh, he's pounding on his own people, but he's not pounding on his own people that they don't know how to do anything. He's pounding on his people that they have been screwed over, and that they're too stupid to see it. That's his message. Wake up, black man.
That's what I was just saying.
Mm-hmm. But he's not saying they don't know how to make bread. Doesn't know how that's ludicrous. There's all kinds of engineers that are black, right?
Oh.
There's all kinds of scientists that are black. Oh. There's all kinds of carpenters that are black. This idea that because only white men could do something is a crock of shit. absolute crock of shit. I mean, the Chinese and the Japanese societies were so far ahead of the white societies, it was nuts. Now, were the Chinese and the Japanese sitting over there going, God, them white people is stupid? We should go over there and help them out, because if we don't help them out, they're all going to starve to death. Because history states their cultures were far more advanced than our cultures were. So that's a no-go, that nonsense.
Well, if you want to live on a basic level, I would agree.
No. The fact is that Africa, all of Africa,
they know how to feed themselves. They know how to find water. They'll dig for it if they have to.
All the resources
they don't know much more.
All of the resources in Africa are controlled by outside entities. The politics is controlled by outside entities. Okay? So if the blacks are killing the whites and the whites used to be killing the blacks, both of those scenarios were set up, just like the genocide of the Native Americans. Okay? And then you shift the blame somewhere else. Okay? No difference. But I can't do anything about Africa. Okay? I live in North America. This is where we need to concentrate, because this is where we live, and these are our nations, and these were our cultures, and we got to get our cultures back. And we're not going to get them back unless we get involved. And we don't get involved, I mean, what did they do? They shifted, like they said, in the mid-19th century through Darwinism, they killed God. They created a void. And the void's got to be filled. So after a few generations, now we're going to fill it with what? We're going to fill it with Sharia law. Now, why can we fill it with Sharia law? How could that possibly work? We're a Christian nation. Well, the kids don't know anything about this now. The vast majority of kids don't know anything about this now. So now we'll bring in Islam like it's a new craze. That's why you have the kids praying in Islam in the schools. Because it's normal to them. They don't know nothing about it. They don't know nothing about this. They have nothing to base it on. Okay, so now the generations that came before them, it's their responsibility to put this right. Because the kids don't have any background. They got no history. And that's what we got to do. We got to get busy. Damn busy, damn quick. And I'm just laughing here because I will be the mayor in 2018 here, come hell or high water.
What I will tell you
it's going to be fun.
Is keep physical paper books. I've got some encyclopedias that were thrown out by my library. Uh-huh. I did dumpster diving, uh-huh. And I grabbed them encyclopedias and I got them in my library right now.
Well, I mean, an encyclopedia, what good is that?
Because
plagiarized
everything's digital, and everything digital can be changed.
Well, yeah, but doesn't mean what's in the encyclopedia is correct either. We're going to hit the music here real quick. So Hal's up on deck at 3:00. I got to go find out. I guess we're leaving damned early in the morning to go down to Newmarket, Ontario, to see what we can do to help Michael out in the injunction, because they want his farm. They want him in the dustbin, and this is not whites beating up Africans. This is not blacks throwing whites off the land. This is whites throwing whites off the land right here in good old Ontario, Canada, who won't allow people to have a choice of their foods. So when I look at it from that angle, what's going on in Africa, I ain't got time for it. We got our own problems right here. And we need to deal with them, and we need to put all of our efforts towards dealing with our own nations, and then get the shining light.
Thanks, Ron.
Take care, everybody. Thank you very much. Don't forget, Hal's on his street.
Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one thinks gun, trees, lie to your face, fight and die. Cause God forgives.
the tracks. You can catch